Welcome to One Up Fantasy, helping you one up the fantasy football competition. For the latest in Chicago sports news, visit ChiCitySports.com. And now, here are the hosts of One Up Fantasy, Stephen Johnson and Chris Jackle. Kaboom!
Greetings and salutations, one and all. Welcome in to another episode of One Up Fantasy here on ChiCitySports.com and the Tape Never Lies Network. I'm Stephen Johnson. He is Chris Jackle. We are back in the saddle after a week off. I will take that as a selfish week. A little too much to drink on the birthday last week, and it would have been an entertaining show for everybody watching. However, did not want to make that big of an ass of myself. So here we are to wrap up the season here after the finishing of week number 18. And I tell you, it's I feel like it's just like a giant exhale, knowing that the season is done. But at the same time, it really isn't, because it's never too soon to talk 2022 NFL season, right?
Well, first off, as Mr. Loblo says down below, happy belated birthday. Jeepers, creepers, you fucking old man. And you can't put out on the internet probably what you were going to put out on the internet last Tuesday. So it was probably a blessing in disguise that you had one extra cocktail and kept you from, or whatever it was you were indulging in,
I wish it was only one. Wasn't feeling the greatest the morning after, but
these things happen.
Yeah, nothing like taking a train into downtown Chicago, feeling like you're gonna.
Hey, you wouldn't have been the only person on the train probably feeling that way. So, but some of us probably felt that way that Monday morning anyway, or that Wednesday morning, trying to get over the bullshit of the fantasy season of week 17. If you took a bad beat, or if Jamar Chase put 60 up on you and you fucking took a wash, or that Monday night game with Najee Harris's touchdown, all those things, but yeah, those will make you puke nonetheless. Just like George McCaskey talking, it pretty much gives me the same feeling at this point. That fucking creep.
Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later, because obviously it's one hell of a week. It's only Tuesday. It's already one hell of a week. But man, I know.
A day that everyone was supposed to be so happy yesterday. The one, I hate that the term Black Monday comes. It provides us with what we want to hear, and then George opens his mouth and just completely just crams, hopelessness down people's throats and insults and croots, and just it's like, dude, what the fuck, man? Fuck you. Anyhow, the different show, TTNL going to be live tomorrow night with Olin coming on.
That's going to be a great show.
It's going to be a wonderful show. I'm sure he has nothing to say on the matter. So, it's probably, it's going to be fucking fantastic, dude. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be tune in tomorrow, 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central. Get there, be square, be a friend, tell a friend. But we're here to talk, like you said, man, 2022 fucking fantasy is fucking already on the fucking burner. There's no hot stove with fantasy.
It's funny. I'm sure you had the same thought that I did, where like after the end of week 17, you're like, thank God this is done. And then you think about it, and you're like, oh yeah, no, we can. There's this and there's that and there's this. So it's all over the place. Really all over the place. And George got 1 of 8. Hey, one's better than none. One is better than none. We got Brian in here too. Won 2 of my leagues. So we got some winners chilling.
How'd you do
in the chat?
You're in like 47 leagues. So if you won, 25%, you probably won like 10 grand. So
yeah, God, I wish. It was a tale of really dumb decisions. I think that's the best way to put it. I lost one because I started Foster Moreau over Noah Fant. Started another.
You were saying Noah Fant was the play.
I know. It was one of those like last 15-minute things where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this. And it completely backfired.
It happens. It happens, brother.
It happened. Playing Goddard over Mooney, that one cost me a game. And then I got a best ball victory because I didn't have to worry about making these screw ups. But the one that took the cake, it was for a client. Really, it was a Frankenstein season. Drafted Allen Robinson, drafted TJ Hawkinson, drafted Miles Sanders. And so I'm sitting here flying by the seat of my pants, trying to just
that's why you earn the big bucks, brother.
Build this roster together. And so, like championship weekend, had Goddard, Russell Gage, Amon-Ra St. Brown, who, as we all know, had a fantastic finish to the season. Darnell Mooney was in there as well. Joe Mixon. And then really it came down to a question of, do you want to trust Ryan Tannehill or Ben Roethlisberger in a championship game? Opponent playing Deontay Johnson. You think, okay, it's Big Ben's last ride, his last home game. Maybe he's got something going.
76 times. I went out on Twitter and said that, he was at 36, I think, or 30 at halftime or something. So I'm like, all right, he may get to 60. I think he ended with 36 attempts.
Yeah, it was the most attempts by a quarterback that threw for that little yardage.
90. Did he break 100?
It was like 149. It wasn't good, but here's the thing.
You're right. Okay, I remember that.
That absolutely killed me was that that entire last sequence, last 90 seconds of how everything went, and looking at I was
watching that through like one eye on the couch, trying to stay awake, just like, oh my god.
the Steelers had the lead. And we were up by 0.04 points. 0.04. And I'm thinking, okay, like if he needs the ball, it's over. It's over. Yeah. And then Najee ran for that touchdown. And I'm like, holy shit, this is happening. There's no kneel down. They've got this.
Yeah.
And then the Steelers got the interception. And Big Ben came back out on the field and had to do the one kneel down and ended up losing by 0.06 because of that one kneel down.
You image of that, yeah.
And I wanted to cry. I'm like, this isn't even my league.
They got it. I mean, how do you got to negate that at some point? Like you got the NFL or fantasy needs to do something with respects to the kneel down. I don't, it's technology is advanced at this point. I think you could fucking figure it out. Either it's an option in like the settings or it's, because I saw a lot of shit on Twitter with a few things that happened during the playoffs with respects to kneel downs over week 16 and 17. Yeah. And it cost people playoffs. It cost money, so that's some bullshit. I feel your pain. When I saw that picture, I sent it to a bunch of my buddies and they were just like, oh my fucking God,
And I got roasted on Twitter because they were all like, who the hell starts Ben Roethlisberger in any week, let alone a championship week? And you got the options out there.
Do what you have to do to try to win some money,
It was
survive in advance or survive and win, so.
That was the fun of my championship week.
So you had a win somewhere in there, but it wasn't what you were hoping for, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Right.
So, could have been worse, I guess. But man, it was something. It was something. Did you avoid your toilet bowls?
You know what? To be perfectly honest with you, I never looked to see if I won that game. I was
winning.
Are you
serious? How do you not look?
Because I was pissed, and I'll do it right now. I think I won.
Are you being serious that you never looked?
I did not look at that league. I swear to you, because
how do you not look at a league?
I didn't look at the final score because I was winning at the time, and I was just all right, well, I think I got this in the bag. And that's kind of sad to say because there was money on the line come next season. But Let me just double check, but it's bad to say. But I won 2 championships, and then I lost one, and then there were 2 I didn't make the playoffs in that were just god awful. And yeah, I'm looking right now, seriously. 7-1 right here. Hold on.
I'm still like flabbergasted that you did not look.
I had a lot going on, I guess. You know?
Yeah, that's true.
I'm going to say that, but to that point, it is embarrassing. And oh my God, you guys aren't going to believe this, but I lost by 0.04.
All right, let's see. Hold on, I gotta bring this up here. Let's see if I can bring this up. Oh my God, look at that!
Holy shit, huh? Look at that son of a bitch.
Oh my God!
Wow. I came in last place. Fuck me. If Shane or Jay hears this, hey, fuck. Yeah, I took Deontay Foreman out, and thanks, buddy. You fucking bum. Nick Chubb, you fuck. Wow, that just happened live. That was interesting.
Not a single person in your league even bothered to give you hell over that?
No.
What kind of league is that?
You know what? They very well could have, and I just didn't look at the text messages. Fuck them.
I just don't want to even look at this. Oh, my God.
Needless to say, I lost the toilet bowl, so beer's on me at the draft next year, I guess. So that's how it rolls. Well, Jay, I had Nick Chubb that was coming back, and I played Singletary, was the guy that I took out, and I put Singletary in. But when I look at it, I started Ertz, actually. Fuck me. I deserve it. Wow. 0.04. We were just talking about bad beats. Well, hey, how you doing?
We're twins.
I was hoping he had Roethlisberger or some bullshit, but yeah.
Wow. Man.
Anyway.
That's something. Well, new beginnings.
Yeah. 'Tis the season. Fuck.
That's the best way to put it. So yeah, we're gonna talk 2022. There are already rankings out, believe it or not, for redraft leagues on Fantasy Pros. So we're gonna talk about some of those rankings and who's a little too high, who's a little too low for what we have going into the 2022 season. But before we do that, I think we'd be ill-advised not to talk a little bit about just the ups and downs of 2021, the MVPs, the not so great players, the duds, and everything else in between. And I mean, really, to start it off, if there's one specific thing from this season that you're just like, okay, never again, whether it's a player, a situation, a league, any type of setup that you've run into or situation that you've run into, what's the thing that sticks out in your mind where you're like, I'm not doing that shit?
That's a great question, because there's many things that I could actually, one of the things that I just kind of, I was afraid Derrick Henry this year was going to get hurt much earlier in the season. I never draft him for some odd reason. And I took him this year for the first time ever in a few teams, and it killed me. And not that I won't draft him next year, but looking at 2022, I'm seeing his ranking, as we look at it, he's not RB1 for obvious reasons. Jonathan Taylor is, going to be as we get to it. But I with that being said, I can't have that mindset anymore because the way the season just went, if you see a running back and you like him, you got to kind of go out and grab him. And with the hopes that he's going to stay healthy, he's not going to get Omicron or he's not going to get fucking whatever. And because I hope we don't deal with COVID next year in 2022, but who knows? But to that point, I'd like to trust my gut a couple more times early on in the draft because I try to you end up overthinking some things. You try to get cute and you're like, it's like overthinking Kamara or, but I did it with Henry and it's it's just kind of frustrating. And I don't know if I necessarily answered your question correctly. I was looking something up when you asked me.
So you're back on the never Henry train is essentially what it comes down to.
But more or less, like, don't be afraid to draft a guy with an injury, not with an injury history, but just trust your gut at this point. Don't be a pussy and take the pick. Like it's like I should have taken Henry before when I sat on it, when I had an opportunity, and things could have definitely went different for me. And I took a guy that ended up getting hurt, whether it's CMC or, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but I'm just saying, man, the rankings are the rankings, but they're everywhere, and everyone's kind of along the same line. But if there's a guy you like in a spot and you're feeling that he's the right guy for you, go for it, and stick to your guns and don't waver as you go through the draft. It's just like I'm using Henry as an example just because it fucking sticks in my craw, and we've talked about it before. So the Henry train.
Yeah. I mean,
what about you though? Because I gave a shitty answer.
I'm there with you on the Derrick Henry thing. I didn't like drafting him either. He was one of those guys where it's like, I'll do it in a league I don't care about, but in terms of like the ones where I'm really passionate, I don't want to lose. Like I'm just not going to touch him. But it's weird to say that because you think about the season that he had, he was still the NFL rushing leader like 4 weeks after he got injured on Halloween afternoon. It was the most bizarre thing to just watch what he was able to do in such a short time period. And I will say this, there's a lot of people out there that are saying like, oh, he's nearing the end of it. You need to be careful. He's back this week.
He's going to
fucking wasn't a catastrophic injury that's going to affect him long term into 2022. No. This is something that he's going to be able to come back from and move forward with. If there's anybody I'd be concerned about in regards to injury history, it's Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah,
that here we are.
I think the Panthers are agreeing with you. So just interjecting that, because I think they're looking to possibly look to move him.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, you got to wonder, okay, is this a guy that can stay healthy, not just for 16 games, 17 games, and then into the playoffs?
How about 10?
Yeah, 10. Yeah. I mean, I think anybody would take 10 at the rate that the draft capital's been for him so far. And we'll talk about him a little bit later because where he's sitting currently in rankings is rather shocking. Given the recent injury history, despite the fact that, you can argue that his fantasy points per game in 2020 was the highest ever in the history of the NFL at over 30 points per game. So that ability still sits there. And I mean, you can talk about the 2019 season when he blew up, and then even in limited action this year, he was able to put up some pretty decent numbers as well. Obviously, nowhere near, what he was able to do in the previous seasons. But the thing that really got me this year, and it's more of a league structure situation that I am going to petition hard against in the leagues that go from year to year, and that's the IR and bench situation. There are quite a few leagues where I play in very shallow bench leagues, talking 4 or 5 bench slots. And in a year like this, especially when COVID is still an issue with these players who are out, and obviously the time out for players has shrunk now from 10 to 5 days. But at the same time, it creates such a conundrum when you're literally stuck with the thought of, okay, I've got, say, for example, a Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I have to start a wide receiver. And like, I have a stacked bench in between bye weeks and injuries. I have no one to start. So do I just take the 0, or do I drop this stud and pick up somebody and more or less probably lose said stud?
No,
and I think it's a disadvantage, and it just doesn't make the game fun. And that's ultimately what everyone is here to do, is just to have fun and just enjoy it. And I think between all of the injuries and the COVID situations and the bye weeks, I mean, it was just this snowball effect.
Yeah.
Where by the end of the year, you're just like, holy shit, I just want to be done. I just want to be done because I'm sick and tired of looking at these rosters and thinking, what more can I do?
So
with
Stephen,
what's going on.
Let me ask you. So are you are you saying like so the way I've seen it is if you don't have an IR designation but you're listed as out, I think you should be able to go on the injury whatever the designation for injured players. It's something that I noticed there was a couple times. I even think in one of my leagues I got an email, I think maybe from ESPN, or they stated that you had an option to add more bench spots, like they had created more, or someone had told me this and I just ended up adding 2 more bench spots. I just, asked the guys what their thoughts were in the, hey, because of what's going on, do you guys want to add 2 more injured slots? And everybody agreed. I also thought about an option where if you're in that situation where you have to drop a guy, you should get the first opportunity to get that guy back on your team in a situation where, based on injury or, the way the dynamic of the league has been set up, it's something to think about to alleviate that problem that you're talking about. So you can be like, all right, well, I have to drop him now. It's almost like creating a bench spot but without doing it, I guess. It just doesn't make sense. I think you should just make a bench spot, but thinking out loud here, but
and that's the thing, as well as it has really shown a lot of light on various commissioners and just how flexible they are, or I hate saying it, but commissioners, and there are ones out there where if it puts them in a position where they might hurt their chances, and they just say, oh nope, sorry. I've heard that happen numerous times this year, where they've just kind of wiped their hands of the situation because it's just something that doesn't necessarily benefit them in the moment.
Okay.
And then, it comes back, it turns into this thing, it starts to boil over among league mates where you have one side fighting another in terms of what's the best option to move forward. And I think this is only going to fester as time goes on if we have to continue to, look at this types of things. Like Irish Rastafarian in here, Russ was out for 2 weeks before he hit IR for the Hawks. Wholeheartedly agree with your point that out players should be allowed on IR. In leagues that do not allow that. Hell, I was a part of a league this year where pup players were not allowed on IR. And it's like, they're out for 6 weeks. And you're telling me that you can't put a player on IR longer, double the length of the minimum IR state. Like, where does that make any sense? And I'll put up a fight all damn day about it, but for whatever reason, things get said, rules get put in place, nothing makes sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
That's where you need a good commissioner, right? You need a guy or girl that's going to be there to at least communicate with league members to try to ensure that everybody's voice is heard, but also people need to understand it's okay to have a difference of an opinion. At the end of the day, we're all fucking adults. I mean, you're not in a fantasy league with a 12-year-old unless it's like your, son's league or something, whatever. But you're not, there's no reason to unless you're cheating, which is pretty hard to do in fantasy football, unless you're colluding with somebody, the commissioner can't cheat because everything's documented. If you make a move in the commissioner tab, it shows up in the, it's just built in fail safe. So you can't fuck people over.
It's funny how it not used to be that way.
And dude, I have a story that happened years ago where a dude changed his lineup in the middle of the first round of the playoffs, and dude got hurt. And it was the Raiders Chiefs, I think. And this is when I was in college. And my buddy was like, wait, he refreshed the score. And next thing you know, this dude that got hurt is now on the bench, and some other dude's in that had already played and scored 25 points. And and then it was, and this is all friends I grew up with, and that guy is no longer in the league, and the league is actually still going on. But we got rid of that individual, and I mean, that's the league I bitch about, but nonetheless, and someone had asked if you can add spots in the middle of a season. I was able to in the ESPN league this year. I don't know about in the past. I thought that they changed that because of the way the shit played out this year with COVID.
Yeah, I think to get around it, it's almost like you have to unleash a almost an unlimited number of IR spots to really alleviate any issue that you may run into. And it's crazy to think that that's even, something that you have to worry about.
Yeah.
But, to the point of you need as many, and I'm all for this, as many IR spots as you have bench spots. Because there are situations that, I've seen all but maybe one or two guys hit the IR, be out with COVID, be out for whatever reason, a nagging hamstring, whatever it may be. And people can argue, that's it's part of the game. You got to work through it. But it's such a crapshoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so to Bob's point, and I agree with you, and it is a crapshoot, but and back to having a good commissioner. And so there's nothing about changing rules. I think more or less it's talking to the members of your league and coming up with typically something you vote on and like, all right, we need a majority here. This is what we're proposing. We've had the fucking slew of whatever, the COVID issue. It can't just because of injury. It's more the COVID issue is what created this problem, and right. I think so with that, it's something that should have been addressed, and some of the fantasy apps realized that and allowed that to change. But it's not like you just did that and didn't tell anybody. That you need a commissioner that's going to keep those things on the, whether it's through the messaging, texts, emails, however it is, the app itself, smoke signals, whatever. You just need to be able to correspond with one another to make sure that everybody gets it so everyone can take advantage. But there are people that don't like that and we're like, hey, if your team gets fucked with injuries and COVID, well, my team doesn't, I should reap the benefits because there's luck involved. And so like it's a toss up and that's why it's a vote. And so I think, with a solid commissioner and somebody that just doesn't collect the money and just hits start league and end league, it's, it's some things that you can do to keep people happy and keep the season with the ups and downs of injuries and COVID more enjoyable. And so you're not fucking screaming at your fucking computer as you're trying to fucking set a lineup,
Well, that happens regardless.
Yeah, fucking you took Noah Fant out, you silly bum. What the fuck?
Oh man, pain. So I guess on the flip side of that, talking about the things that you don't want to experience again, you don't want to, relive again. What are the things that you said? Okay, you know what? This works, whether it's a certain player, I'm buying in hard next year. Let's get things rolling. Or again, just anything that you experience in terms of how leagues are set up.
So one of the things I want to get rid of in all leagues is the waiver wire. I am sick of the waiver wire. I think it should be the fab. I don't know. But I had more leagues waiver wire than fab, and I'm actually going to try to get into less leagues like that and more leagues, like the ones we're talking about here. I actually I run a work league, and nobody wanted to do it last year, and then this year I proposed super flat. I'm looking to change a few things, and we're maybe adding a defensive player, and getting rid of just overall defense and kickers. Add 2 defensive players, and so but also add the free agency budget. So that's my biggest crux right now. What about you?
Quick to answer, Bob. FAB or FAAB, free agent auction budget. So essentially, you're bidding a portion of a budget on players instead of dropping in a waiver wire claim, and so it's a little bit more even in terms of who can get who, and you don't have to worry about the crappiest teams or the teams that haven't made any waiver claims in a very long time being first in line to grab the hot pickup of the week. For me, it is falling into the method of not drafting a quarterback until later. It's I feel like there was some validity to it this year, which is really weird. I mean, you look at what Lamar Jackson kind of fell apart as at the end of the year and how high he was going. Patrick Mahomes not being Patrick Mahomes, the same thing for Dak Prescott. Really, Josh Allen was the one guy who remained relatively unscathed. at the quarterback position in terms of these guys that were being drafted relatively high. And then here you are at, the tail end of the top 10, you guys like Matt Stafford, Tom Brady, who was really a league winner in a lot of circles and got a lot of teams to the championship.
Yeah.
Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow. These are guys where you're sitting and waiting until the 7th, 8th, 9th, even 10th round. And so here you are being able to load up on positions where, it was a little bit more of a minefield, specifically at running back, as we've discussed multiple times on this show, just about the injuries and whatnot, but being able to draft, one or two more players at those positions to build up the depth before having to worry about the quarterback position was huge. And I really don't see any signs of it slowing down, because you still are going to have those top tier quarterbacks. They're still going to be drafted relatively high, but now that pool has become significantly deeper in terms of how you can expect some quarterback one numbers from week to week. It's not, 3 or 4 guys and you're like, I'm set, look at me. That list is now maybe 7 or 8 deep.
Absolutely.
And that goes a very, very long way when it comes down to setting a strong roster where it's not having to sacrifice an early round pick on a position that, may or may not come back to bite you.
And to that though, Stephen, there's probably like 15 quarterbacks on the list. If you look at the top 15 rankings for next year, if you were to just look at like number 15 is Kirk Cousins, 14 is Deshaun Watson if he plays. But Jalen Hurts at 12. That's amazing. Stafford at 10. The top 10 is loaded. And if you're looking to get a QB, that's a good strategy to take now, Stephen. I agree with you in trying to get a little bit earlier instead of waiting, because there is fruit in that labor, because it's going to pay off. You're going to be able, because I don't think you're going to be the only person thinking that way now, because everybody's going to want to get that shiny toy because they see the points that comes along with, with the strong quarterback play, especially if you're in like a super flex league. If you get one early, you're going to be able to grab another one, you take advantage of somebody that did not and steal one of their guys,
Right.
So, that's it. You're right. And I think though, speaking of like 2022, and we may talk about it today a little bit, but there are a couple running backs coming out of the 22 draft that it's a very similar class from 2022 to 2021. Jesus, maybe the pain meds, who knows? But the Najee Harris was obviously the number one back this year, but there's 3 guys I think that could give him almost a run for his money with respects to production. I think there's some dudes, especially with the way the shit played out this year. I could see, and we could talk about it later, but I think there's some dynasty guys, especially in like the top 6 picks, with respects to drafting in a dynasty. You probably could see 3 running backs go before, there'd be more running backs taken before quarterbacks taken in your dynasty drafts for rookies anyway.
Yeah, it's a unique season for dynasty. Is like you alluded to it. It's a year of the running back. It definitely seems like, as we know, there hasn't been a ton of talk about quarterbacks and just how deep they can potentially go. And, there's been talk that, hell, if Justin Fields was in this class, he'd be the consensus number 1 quarterback in this class. And so I think that's why a lot of people are more than willing to be okay with the Bears and what they did with the way that things have gone. Yeah, there's a couple guys out there, Sam Howell with North Carolina, Matt Corral with Mississippi, Ole Miss. But really, there's not a lot of names that scream off the page at quarterback that could tie into that. So yeah, we'll talk dynasty and rookies here in a second. But just to wrap up the quarterback talk as well, I want to just mention this. I kind of got off. No, you're good. You're good. Mention this as an average points per game at the quarterback position, just to understand the depth of what this position is. Anywhere from 20.4 to 22.7 points per game. So give or take 2 points per game. How many quarterbacks do you think are in that range?
For what, 2021? Like where they fell?
Yes.
Oh, I would have to say 11.
Close. It was 9.
Oh, shit.
So
okay.
That's not including the top 2 quarterbacks of the season, which were Justin Herbert and Josh Allen. Justin Herbert was at 23.2. Josh Allen was at 24.5, leading the way as the QB1. But again, you got that list of names: Tom Brady, Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, Joe Burrow, Matthew Stafford, all finishing over 20.4 points per game.
Wow.
I mean, we talked about the depth, and I mean that's not even bringing other guys into the conversation that could have been
Kirk Cousins,
argued in
Derek
that
Carr.
case.
You know, there's some guys that I like. Derek Carr, I think he's a guy. Jimmy Garoppolo carried some fantasy teams this year. You know, if you're streaming guys, you know, granted they weren't in the top 10 and they didn't hit that threshold that you're talking about, but they put up some solid production. But back to your point, you know, there were definitely, and that's a large pool. Did you think going into that, you know, without knowing that, were you anticipating seeing that number of guys? No,
absolutely not.
And if you look, there's some legs on there, like, you know, like Mahomes, Allen. I mean, I wouldn't say Rodgers, but, you know, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, you know, those guys all rushed for, I want to say over 600 yards. That's impressive. Those are guys that I think are going to be top fantasy quarterbacks every year. And there's a stat that I've kicked around before. I'm not going to remember the entire thing, but in the 6 out of the 8 top, I'm not even going to go down the road, because all needless to say is they all ran for over 600 yards in the last, I think it was like the last 4 years. 1 out of the top 3 quarterbacks all ran for 600 yards. So needless to say, those dudes always put up fantasy points, is what I'm trying to spit out. And it's just, I probably should stop. I'm gonna take that on the fucking pain meds. I'm sorry.
You're good. Bob has a question here. Any stats to compare QBs from previous years? It's funny. There was the quarterback scoring was actually higher in 2020. Dak Prescott led the way. He only had 5 games. Obviously, the Achilles injury with 27 points per game in terms of a full season. Yeah, it was crazy how much he was throwing. He looked like a league winner from the get-go there before that injury. But Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen were neck and neck at about 25 points per game. But I mean, again, the scoring was higher, and so this year it was a matter of holding off. But then looking at 2019, there were only 8 quarterbacks that scored over 20 points per game in 2019. And so you're seeing it stretch out a little bit more. It kind of came back to a median. Again, it's one of those things where I think there's that comfortability factor with the way that things have kind of come about, and the fact that this is becoming a much more pass happy league, as we have been under that impression for several years now. And the Bears at some point hopefully get to a pass happy offense. Hey, maybe it'll happen this year.
Bring in Pep. That's my guy.
Pep Hamilton. Yeah, I saw your little
my nocturnal emission.
Yeah.
Some people had to Google that, I'm sure, because they don't know what that means. But I have to ask you a question though regarding Justin Herbert. I wasn't sure if it was you, but I was talking at the beginning of the season that they thought there might have been a regression with Herbert this year, kind of just because he lit the league on fire last year, you know, as a rookie, and then coming into this year, maybe he was going to have a little bit of a sophomore slump. I would say he had a great second season in that Week 18 game. 6 for 6 on fourth down play, 106. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And Staley screwed the team out of a playoff game, playoff berth. But were you surprised by Herbert this year?
Yes and no. I didn't think that he was necessarily going to need to throw it as much as he did. And it turns out that they were able to work through his arm. And Lombardi, the offensive coordinator, connected to one Vince Lombardi, what he was able to do with that offense, and it has turned him into a budding star. And honestly, I think the sky is the limit, and I still feel like he's somewhat semi underrated for what he brings to the table, which is really weird to say.
Lombardi?
No, Justin Herbert.
Oh, Justin Herbert. Yeah,
with what he's able to do. Like you look at his stats and you look at the outputs that he was able to do here over these last few weeks. The numbers weren't the greatest in week 16 and 17.
16 and 17 were but they weren't bad.
Right. I mean, he finished with 5,000 yards. He had 17 weeks to do it. He finished with 5,000 yards. Let's be real. That's still a pretty decent
and all that other shit going on. It's pretty impressive to anybody that had great years this year. I think, regardless of 18 weeks, Justin Herbert is somebody that, it got Flores fired. He wanted Herbert, and and the GM there wanted Tua, and now it turned into a pissing match, and say la vie Flores. Maybe he comes to Chi-Town, but yeah, Herbert, I thought, I was one of those guys that, thought maybe he was new coach, new offensive coordinator. I thought, it just spelled like the perfect storm for him to see a little bit of a regression. But man, yeah, I do agree with you. Sky's the limit for Herbert. I see him being in that top tier, for next year, 2022. I mean, you're looking at the ranking. He's number 4. Right behind Patrick Mahomes and Kyler Murray, Josh Allen number 1. But you wouldn't have to twist my arm to put Herbert over Murray with respects to a ranking, in my opinion, for next year.
I'm right there with you. I mean, when you got a QB that averaged nearly 300 yards a game through the air, he does make a couple boneheaded moves, and I think Charger fans, however small that fan base may be, if you watch their home games, they will tell you the same thing, where there is those errors. But he's a young quarterback, and I think from what he's been able to do, both with his arm as well as kind of sneaking out of the pocket as well, and getting on the run. Chargers have a guy that they're going to be able to rely on for a very, very, very long time, and probably take them a little bit further than what Phillip Rivers was able to do for all of the years there. What do we have there from Bob?
A little keeper question.
Alvin Kamara last year plus sacrifice first round pick, or
Herbert all day long.
Herbert, 2 years left, sacrifice fourth round pick. Oh man.
You could draft a running. You get Herbert in the 4th. He's going to go earlier than that.
Yeah, here's the thing too is, if you don't know where that first pick is going to land in that first round, that could come back to bite you so damn quick. So damn
really
quick.
I thought that was a no-brainer. I thought you would agree with Herbert in the 4th, so I do.
I do.
Oh, okay.
I do.
All right.
No,
all right. So
I'm saying because
he's giving you good advice here. We're agreeing,
right? Yeah, because he'd be
We're not
sacrificing
on you.
Yeah, sorry. He'd be sacrificing his first round pick. And so, let's say like there's still the draft order is to be determined. Second overall. Yeah, absolutely not. No. There are 5 guys I would take over even considering Alvin Kamara. 5 guys. Yeah. So no, absolutely not.
And there's no restriction on keeper. Like, you can keep a first round pick. That's wild. Like normally all my leagues are, if there's keeper, it's like after the 5th round.
Yeah. I think ours is anybody that was drafted after the 4th.
I drafted Michael Thomas in the 12th round in one of my home leagues this year. I kept him on the IR all year. I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to keep him next year. My team fucking sucks. That was one of my 2 stinkers. So I'm like, you know what? Thomas in the 12th, maybe, should be a good pick, I figured he might be worth it. See who plays quarterback in New Orleans next year. Is he even on the list for rankings? I'm going to look that up while we're here bullshitting.
He's got to be. I mean, that'd be weird if he was just like he just.
Where do you think he is before I find it? I found him, so you got to pick real quick.
Okay. In the overall list.
PPR. Obviously.
Oh God. 85.
38.
Get out. There is not a chance in hell.
He's ahead of Michael Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
In full PPR.
Full PPR. He's got Darnell Mooney at 35, Marquise Brown at 36. The fucking link you sent me, brother. Cortland Sutton, and then Michael Thomas.
Is that just wide receivers?
Yes.
Or is that every? Oh, I thought you
wide
meant everyone.
Overall. Oh, Jesus. I'm sorry. Then let me do that for you. Okay. Touche, sir.
You scared me there for a minute.
All right. Here we go. I got it right here. Where'd you go? Okay. What did you say?
85.
Holy shit. 87.
All right. I'm
you make the big bucks, Mr. Johnson. That's why you make the big bucks, brother. Not only is it the golden voice, but that fucking big brain of yours, brother.
Oh, now you're giving me way too much credit. So we've got some other players. I think we can shoot back and forth here in terms of where they're landing in the early rankings here on Fantasy Pros for 2022. So we'll just bounce back and forth here. We'll give the number and the player and whether we're buying or selling.
All right.
At that rate. So I'll start off here. This one's going to be a fun one because this can go one of many ways. Cam Akers, 47. So he in a 12-teamer, he is a end of 4th round selection.
What's that, like RB 20?
Yes.
20, right? I'm looking. Okay, I just found him. Buying. So
would you draft Cam Akers at the end of the 4th round? Is ultimately what it boils down to.
I'm going to have a hard time with that. That's in the 4th round. But I could probably get Elijah Mitchell. I could probably get – would you take J.K. Dobbins in the same round?
I like J.K. Dobbins. I just don't think that the Ravens' offense is well equipped to give him the productivity that he needs to be fantasy relevant where he is being drafted.
I think I would take Cam Akers over James Conner, but I would not take Cam Akers over Elijah Mitchell.
Okay. There's 2 other guys that are just ahead of him in these rankings, Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Josh Jacobs.
I like Jacobs. I know a lot of people are down on him, and CEH too. I just think in that offense, he does produce when he's healthy. Cam's one of those guys. I mean, that's why he's there, but David Montgomery is 16, and so
the disrespect.
I think he's too high. I really do. I think he's more like an RB 30. I think Chase Edmonds should be ranked higher. I just think coming off that injury, you got to see what he had. I think, I remember last year going into the draft, like with respect to like Michael Thomas being out and hurt, he was buried in the wide receiver list. And I think that, they're just happy he's practicing. I'm imagining that fellas at draft pros are just like, fantasy pros are just like, all right, he's going to he's healthy enough to practice. He's probably going to play in the playoffs a little bit. But I mean, if he goes and balls out, I mean, he might not be at 20 as we talk about in a couple of weeks, in a couple of months. So, I right now I think it's premature, but maybe it's where he should be based on the news with respect to his injury. What about you? What do you think?
Some of the other names here, I just have a really tough time. I mean, he didn't play very much in the Week 18 game, and just talking about how he looked, there was that explosive demeanor about what he was doing, which is shocking enough given the severity of the injury. But that is scary. Like I mean, you look at the list of running backs, let alone NFL players that come back successfully from Achilles injuries. It's not a very extensive list. And, to put that type of investment in a player like that, that's a ballsy move that I want really nothing to do with. In all honesty, I think I'd rather just have the nice, easy high floor investment where I'm not having to worry about too much. But I'm there with you on Elijah Mitchell. Like if he was healthy this entire season, I mean, that's a difference maker on any fantasy team. What he was able to do with the ball and how Kyle Shanahan was utilizing him. And I don't think it's going to be any different next year. That he's really probably going to be underdrafted if he sticks around as it stands right now, pick 54 in those rankings and floating around that, because I think he could definitely get you that fringe RB1 value if, again, he can stay healthy. Okay. Bob has a question here. Where is Michael Carter on this list? He is number 69.
Yes,
he
sir.
Is at the running back. Yep. So just on the fringe there of round 6. So mid-round 6 is where Mr. Michael Carter is.
Well, I'm glad you brought him up.
Why is that?
Here's why. Because I have a guy, it's similar in number there, and that's why, not number 69, but, Darnell Mooney.
Oh,
number 78.
Man.
79, sorry. Right in that 7 round. If they don't go out, he's going to be wide receiver 1 in Chicago next year, unless they go out and get a shiny new, receiver in the draft, or if they're, if they go make a play for somebody.
I'm not sold on that he's going to be the number 1 next year. There's something about him. Really? There was a point made on, I'm trying to remember who I was listening to, that on a lot of teams, Darnell Mooney would be the wide receiver 3 because he has that struggle of coming down with the ball in traffic, and really just doesn't have that go up and get it in the contested catches on a consistent basis. And that did come back to bite him in a lot of weeks in fantasy, where, it might have seemed like a smash spot for him. And yeah, he put up 1,000 yards and he had a great
140 targets, 81 catches,
Yeah.
4 touchdowns this year, though.
Looking at where he is at, compared to some of the other names, I guess, he's firmly in that territory of the boomer bust level. I mean, you got Mike Williams, Cortland Sutton, who was a dud, an absolute dud.
Yeah.
Marquise Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Chase Claypool, Robert Woods. So if you're gonna put a gun to my head, I guess compared to these guys, give me Darnell Mooney.
Thank you. All right, I like it.
Give me Darnell Mooney. And here's the positive thing: we all know the Bears have salary cap room this year, and if they do go out and get this Alpha 1, it may only help Darnell Mooney's cause, where he doesn't have to worry about these things that he may not excel at completely. But again, 1,000-yard season isn't nothing to balk at, even if it did happen with an extra game to get him there. I mean, it was still something that he was able to do. But compared to those other names in that list, I'm sneaking down a little bit further. Devonte Parker. I mean, it's not pretty. It's not pretty. So really, he's the consistent method there. Ayuk, that's Bob. Yeah. Bob bringing up Ayuk. Yeah. He came on strong.
He did,
but that was painful at the beginning of the year. That was painful.
He was dropped by a lot of guys. I actually picked him up, and he actually helped me get into the playoffs in one league. Because he was out there. Someone actually had given up, and I said, "Shit, I'll take it." We talked about him here. So looking at a sell low candidate or buy low candidate, I was able to pick him up for free on the fucking waiver wire, like in the middle of the week.
And I guess, I could see myself taking Ayuk over Mooney.
But with Trey Lance coming in next year, I mean, I don't know. Jimmy G, do they want to move on? I mean, I would imagine at this point, but
I mean, Ayuk had a pretty decent game with Trey Lance, didn't he? Am I making that up?
No, you're right. I believe he actually did
6 for 90 or 4 for 94.
He got in the end zone, didn't he?
Not in the Houston game. No.
The following week he did then.
Yeah, I mean, he fit for what it's worth. I mean, I think it took him 5 weeks to get to 100 yards, and then he finished with 826.
Yeah. We were shitting on him pretty heavy here.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to, really, when it comes down to it. But yeah, I okay, yeah, maybe Ayuk. Okay.
Hey, so real quick, talking about players from last year, but I wanted to bring up just something from the year before and the year before, and compared to basically the biggest improvers at each position, right? So just a real quick breakdown. I think that there were some guys that I think stand out where you're like, oh, really? Like Matthew Stafford, he averaged 16.8 fantasy points this year, or in 2020, he averaged 16.8. 2021, 20.4 for a difference, 3.6, right? Here's a guy. I'm not going to say his name, but at running back, I'm going to give you his numbers, and you got to pick. I think you already know who it is.
We'll see.
2020, 4.2 PPR points per game. 2021, 14.7 with a 10.5 improvement.
Oh, who would that be? Huh. Is that Damian Harris?
No, it is Cordero Patterson.
Oh, God.
Okay. All right. I got another one for you. All right. We did Stafford. We did running back. We're new wide receiver. This young man averaged 14 PPR points in 2020. And he averaged 11.9 in 2021 with an 11.9% improvement. Or 11.9 point improvement.
What was that number?
Do the math. 25.9 points in 2021, where he scored 14 points in 2020.
That's Cooper Kupp.
Yeah. All right. And this last one, if you get this, you're fucking fantastic. So the tight end, 2.8 PPR in 2020, 8.1 in 2021 for a 5.3 improvement.
Oh boy.
That's a tough one though, because he's not a top tier tight end.
No, because I mean you said
2.8.
2.8
in 2020.
Is that terrible? I
almost felt like you were going to say his name.
It's Cole Kmet.
It's Tyler Conklin.
Oh, damn it.
Okay. All right. So those were the four guys. Those were the most improved fantasy players at their positions, with Patterson being, arguably they felt he was their most improved player. But Coop had the highest jump in terms of difference in points, and just breaking that down.
Shocker.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think.
Bringing up Cooper Kupp, because where he is sitting right now
for 2022.
Yes, for 2022 in full PPR leagues, he is ranked 9th. In half PPR leagues, he is ranked 5th. Is he worth that investment to you in drafting Cooper Kupp, a career draft this guy in the 4th, 5th, 6th round dude as your first round pick in 2022?
So you're taking him over Justin Jefferson is what you're saying,
Yes.
That's a tough pill to swallow. But I think you're going to have a few years of Cooper Kupp in that Rams offense with Stat Padford. I think you're going to just see some fucking numbers. 25.9. If he has a regression of like 10% or even 20%, he's still at like 20%. He's at like 21 points, So I almost feel like he's a guy that should be in the first round. You were looking at like Devonte Adams last year, similar, same thing. He's in the top 10. So those are the two wide receivers in the top 10 for the 2022 rankings, with Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill sitting right on the outside. So I think he's definitely worthy of a top 10 pick. What about you?
See, I go back and forth because I freak at the reminder that he had that major ACL tear a couple of years ago. But Mike, it's been a couple of years, and I'm not necessarily worried about with guys like Keenan Allen who experience similar situations. Man, I tell you, that's just really high for a wide receiver, and for as deep as wide receiver seems to be I mean, that was an all-time an all-time season in terms of what he was able to do and the consistency in which he was able to do it. And the question then becomes, okay, when do teams catch on and be able to shut him down? And I don't know if it's going to happen, but it worries me. Like that's the biggest concern in the back of my mind is, okay, where would he fall? Let's say from just back to any type of standard mean along those possibilities. Is it 20 points per game? Is it less than that? Is it 19, 18? Because again, like you mentioned, he was at 14 points per game 2 years ago. So I mean, it's still, it's a bump of 4 or 5 extra points per game compared to what he did 2 years ago, which you could still argue is pretty solid. It's just, if I had to put my money on Cooper Kupp or a guy with a significantly more solid consistency pattern like Devonte Adams, and again, we don't know where Devonte Adams is going to play in 2022. It might not be with Aaron Rodgers.
Franchised.
If they can find the money. that's the problem with the Packers right now, is finding the money, and then even guys like Tyreek Hill. Where you think, okay, can this be, that next guy? Because Cooper Kupp ain't young either. So this is kind of an uncharted territory for a guy like this, where, we don't see these career patterns very often in fantasy world. And I think that's my biggest concern. I'd rather have guys like a Najee Harris around that, or even looking at Austin Eckler. As a top 5 pick, especially in full PPR, I think I'd rather have that, in all honesty, just based on how the running backs have gone.
Let me ask you a question. I'm looking here and I see a name that I was actually surprised in the running back list. Javante Williams. They have him listed as a top 10 running back. I think he's even an overall top 20. I'm going to actually double check that before I put that out into this existence in the world here. 19.
You're right.
19.
You're right.
Melvin Gordon was RB 32. I was pretty shocked by the disparity there between the two, by the wide range. Are you surprised by him being in the top 10 at running back?
Everybody thinks that Denver is going to move on from Melvin Gordon, and this just reminds me so much of the Aaron Jones situation with the Packers last offseason, where everyone thought Aaron Jones was out the door. A.J. Dillon was going to be the next big thing. And then here comes Aaron Jones on a brand new, shiny 4-year deal, knocking A.J. Dillon down a few pegs. It would not shock me, given the fact that we have seen Melvin Gordon play pretty damn well, all things considered, when given opportunities. He's got 200-yard games in the last 5 weeks of the season here. That could stifle any Javante Williams talk for 1, maybe 2 years. Yeah, Melvin Gordon's getting up there in age. That's a scary number. And for anybody that is drafting before free agency kind of settles in, Godspeed to you if you take Javante Williams. Even in the draft, I don't think it's a really safe
drafting
maneuver.
Trey Sermon.
I mean, you look at this. I mean, Javante Williams, he had 3 straight weeks inside the top 10 at running back finishes in weeks 12, 13, and 14. Yes, they were against really bad run defenses, so that ability does exist, but at the same time, he kind of hit a rookie wall towards the end there. And so the question then becomes, okay, can he find that next level? Can he find that consistency in being the guy over that many seasons? And you can argue that Drew Lock was the quarterback. They could focus on the run game a little bit more, but that still didn't stop Melvin Gordon. So the question then becomes, is he the guy? Do they need to get a plateau guy? I do not like him at RB10. I do not like him at 15 overall. That is a scary proposition.
I do not like green eggs and ham. I do not
like them, Sam.
No, I do not like Javante Williams. But yeah, so I saw that and I'm like, shit, how did we overlook that? I just thought that was a good guy to bring up, and especially as we move forward in this year, I'm interested to see the fluidity in that list. I know the list we're using and the guys that ultimately put that together. This isn't the end all be all, and it's going to move. It's going to change, especially with coaches coming in, schemes and free agency. As that all plays out, this list is going to change. And I know there's some rookies that we are going to talk about as we move forward here, Stephen. Not today or this evening, but I think as we approach the offseason, there's definitely some guys we have to talk about because they're going to have a fantasy impact, as we saw this year. Jalen Waddle, 102 receiving receptions. Najee Harris putting up the numbers he did. And as we commented earlier, there's some backs that I think that, could actually put up some similar numbers to Najee Harris next year. There's receivers, there's tight ends, I think this year too, that you're going to see making a fantasy impact. And we're going to talk about it here at One Up. I know we're going to talk it at TTNL. Maybe some of those guys will come on and chat with Phil and Shane and what other cast of idiots, that are gracing the airwaves that don't get to talk to the guests, but, just kind of pop up randomly, such as myself or Claude or the lovely Cherie, Stephen, I'm looking forward to talking 2022 fantasy with you this offseason. We are going to be here weekly, correct?
Yes, that we will.
Awesome.
So we'll be running down the gamut. There's never an off switch when it comes to fantasy. And so obviously plenty to talk about and plenty to go over. And
music to your wife's ears, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I guess that's one way to put it.
Makes two of us, brother.
But at the same time, though, plenty of guests that we'll have on this season as well to talk rookies, to talk free agency and the fantasy impact of it. Maybe have some fun along the way with some various games that we can play to liven things up. If news is a little bit dead, there's always something, like we said, to talk about. And if there's not anything to talk about, the Bears are always going to do something dumb that we can spatter on about.
Put a mic in front of George McCaskey, and there'll be plenty of fucking shit to talk about. Fucking, oh man, mommy says I'm doing a good job. Yeah, great. Cut that chain.
Was a quote machine yesterday. I think that's as much as we can say about good old George.
Insert foot into mouth and chew vigorously.
I will give them credit though. The coaching and the GM lists so far have been relatively solid. I'm gonna.
It's everybody.
Yeah, they're casting as wide of a net as possible. Yeah. It's just who's going to be that short list? Are the right guys going to be on that short list? And I'm sitting here biting my nails.
They're catching fucking sharks. They're catching everything in that. And everybody's coming in. But I do hope that they make a good decision. And I do like some of the names that are coming out, and I like, there's a couple, whatever, we could get into it, but there's some guys that I would be very happy that they do bring in and hopefully do bring in and make some change around this Halas Hall and bring a real culture in here, a winning one. And, maybe take a risk here or there to try to actually put a name and put a stamp on this fucking thing and move it forward. So we'll see, man, but there's gonna be plenty to talk about. You ain't fucking lying.
Absolutely. And again, we mentioned it off the top of this show. Be sure to tune in to Keeping It 100 tomorrow night here on ChiCitySports.com and the Tape Never Lies Network with Draft Dr. Phil and Shane, the smartest man, Marsaw. They have Olin Kreutz on to talk that lovely press conference and George's lovely words that he had to say about Olin, as well as just what's happening at Halas Hall with the
fucking piece of shit
wild crew that's going to be putting together the future of the Chicago Bears, as we've come to learn, and as we're getting developments pretty much every hour on the hour with how that looks. But again, plenty to talk about. They'll be talking about it all tomorrow night, so be sure to tune into that. 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central every Wednesday night. You can check that out. But tomorrow's show is a can't miss, to say the least. So it should be a hell of a time. hell of a time. But we'll be back next week. We're going to talk, like Jackal had mentioned, some rookies, looking at that dynasty setup. What can you look at for your rookie drafts heading in to 2022, whether you're drafting before the NFL draft or after? Who the hell knows? But we'll talk about all the potential team changers, league changers, and everything else in between. So be sure to stay tuned. Big
injury last night too, right?
Yep, absolutely. Again, a hell of a championship game. I will say that.
Yeah.
But that definitely shakes up the the rankings a little bit.
Yeah,
but
he'll be back. But you know, I mean, it's just tough to see. I mean, Waddle did the same. He fucked his knee up and put up great numbers. So it's not like, you know, Jameson, you got to worry. But I mean, you got a little bit of a worry. But you know, he's a guy that probably will fall to somebody in their dynasty draft, and you know, they'll make out golden. So hey, you know,
take advantage of it while you can. So. Until next Tuesday night, have a wonderful rest of your week. Like we said, be sure to tune in to Keeping It 100 tomorrow night. Have a great weekend. Enjoy Wild Card Weekend, Super Wild Card Weekend.
Yes.
There's Monday night playoff games now. But nevertheless, we'll be here to break it all down and more next week. So until then, have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk to you next week.
Take care, everybody.